We're recording.
Meeting, please come to order. Barbara, please call the roll.
We have Commissioners Levine, McLean, Hill, Noonan, and Vasquez present.
Thank you, and Commissioner Barad will be here shortly, I am told. For my opening remarks, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and invite an invited guest with a very distinguished background, both here and around the country, to address us for up to 10 minutes. When I was a young congressman, a long time ago, when I was young, I became very friendly with an even younger congressman from Tennessee by the name of Al Gore. Al Gore told me about this guy who ran the Tennessee Valley Authority, who had converted it from a coal-producing, hard energy leviathan to perhaps the most eco-sensitive such institutions in the country. Dave Freeman was appointed by President Jimmy Carter to run the Tennessee Valley Authority, and he, in so doing, became really renowned as one of the leaders in a progressive energy policy anywhere around the world. Subsequent to that time, Dave has run more utilities than you can count, including this one. Dave indicated to me that he would be in town and would be willing to spend 10 minutes sharing his thoughts with us. I will refrain from further biographical detail other than to say that he has a remarkable background, someone I respect greatly, and he highly deserves that respect. He can't speak without his cowboy hat, but I guess he can. Dave, since becoming president of this commission, I've learned more about many of the decisions that you made when you were here. I might want to talk to you about some of them. But in the meantime, we're really, really pleased to have you here, and we welcome you to share your thoughts with us for the next up to 10 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's quite a generous introduction. I don't know what you'll have to say about me when I finish talking, though. Your act of generosity may be the most reckless thing that you've done as president of this organization. I am 93 years old, but so are you and everyone else in this room on the issue of climate. There's a little saying that I think my mother taught me. It says that, you know, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. There's only the present, and we call it the present because it's a gift. We need to focus on the present because the hour is very, very late on the issue of climate. I live in Washington, D.C. now, and I try to follow things out here, and it's almost like there are two Californias. There's the California of Jerry Brown and Eric Garcetti and Kevin DeLeon that have, on paper, gotten us to 100% renewable by a certain date and milestones in between. And then there is the real world of the DWP that's got to make it happen. And I know the mentality and the mindset of this organization and every other utility pretty well. I'm kind of one of them. And there's a feeling unexpressed by the staff that we're the ones that have to keep the lights on. We're the ones that are out there in the bad weather. We're the ones that have to beg the city council for a rate increase. And we've got a big job to do. And these high-minded, righteous politicians just don't understand how hard it is to do what they say. Well, my message to my fellow comrades and the staff is get over it. And I really mean it. Get over it. this kind of blanket of self-pity and feeling like they are trying to make me do something that I'm not quite ready to do is childish, and it needs to stop. It's unbecoming this great agency that is responsible for LA even existing. If it wasn't for a man like Mulholland that went out there and stole the water and brought it to LA, we wouldn't have a city here. If it wasn't for the pioneers who went out and built power plants and we owned them. Let me also remind everyone that this is public power. You're the voice of the people. And I think that any poll of the people of Los Angeles reveals that they want you to pay real good attention to the climate issue and not be what I would call an intelligent denier, which is what you are if you don't take the actions that the climatologists say we must take. It's not a question of wanting to or it being convenient. It's a question of deciding this is what we've got to do. And it's just as important as keeping the lights on and keeping the rates down. Now, let me remind you that you are a big, nasty polluter today. I did about 5 minutes on Google, and I found out that the statistics show that the last year they reported, you put 9.5 million tons of carbon into the air. 9.5 million metric tons. If you didn't have good lobbyists and were paying to get credits on the cap and trade system, you'd be sending $100 million extra for the privilege of running your power plants. Now, Economics 101 tells you that you need to internalize the externalities, and any study from, whether it's from your staff or from a consultant or one that you've done that doesn't include those externalities, which can be quantified in this state rather easily by what the cap and trade system has put a $50 a ton cap, I think. But at that price, you don't need to run in your numbers to see what's going to be cheapest. You can't afford to be running fossil fuel power plants 10 years from now on a cost basis. Now let that sink in. None of your studies that I know of include that internalized cost, which has been quantified. We just got through having the top people in the country come out just yesterday, urging that there be a carbon tax of, I think, 34 or 40 some odd dollars a ton. I mean, you're ignoring all that, and it's just not right. Now, two mayors of this city, both of whom I love, have been bragging about getting off of coal. And they even had my friend who you mentioned, Al Gore, show up with Antonio at the first bragging session. And you were didn't talk very much about a 1,200 megawatt natural gas plant that the staff snuck in on them while they weren't looking. And then there was more bragging when my dear friend Mayor Garcetti and you guys trimmed it back from 1,200 megawatts to 800 a few years ago. But no one has told the people of Los Angeles that methane leaks. That is a fact. And shale methane leaks twice as much as the old wells because there's just more flow back and more drilling that has to be done. And, I spent 5 minutes on Google and I came up with charts that show, and the facts are that you don't know whether switching from coal to natural gas is going to help or hurt climate, because we don't collect the data on methane. So you don't count it and you don't count it, and you brag about all the reductions that you're making, but you're not telling the people of Los Angeles that as you increase natural gas, it's not just the carbon which is half as much, but you have to add the methane. And methane, as a scientific fact, is 80 times as damaging to climate as carbon is. So it just takes a few percentage of methane leaking to where you may be helping just a tiny bit, but you may be hurting just a tiny bit. And it would certainly be more cost effective to just keep burning coal. Now, I'm not recommending that, for God's sakes. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that there's a little bit of truth in advertising problem here in terms of the way you're talking about it. And of course, you have to be proud of the fact that you trimmed back the gas plant from 1,200 to 800, but now you got a consulting telling you you need to build some more gas, and so you make a fool of yourself in having claimed any benefit before, because it just doesn't add up. Everybody in this room knows what the right answer is. I mean, just let it sink in. And let me say, as a guy that became fairly famous in this town 20 years ago for keeping the lights on while everybody else had blackouts, I know how scary it is to a public official when your staff implies or says that one course of action may result in power shortages. They dare not say that. It is misleading. Batteries work just as well as gas turbines. It's just a question of how damn many of them you need to buy. It's a question of cost. It's not a question of reliability. We know how to make power systems reliable, up to 50, 60, 70% renewable, because some other utilities in this state are already doing it. No. It's an issue of cost, and it's an issue of people who are experts about yesterday's power system and are understandably uncomfortable with and concerned about embracing a revolution that has already occurred. And as a public power agency, they seem to forget that if you're projecting the future, first thing, you don't know. Nobody in this room knows what the price of natural gas is going to be 10, 15 years from now, but it is an uncertainty. And you know that labor costs are going to go up. The beautiful thing about solar and wind for a public power agency is it's almost 100% capital, and we have the lowest cost capital of anybody in America because we can issue municipal bonds. That's the reason that LA has always had an advantage over the private companies. It's we owned our own power plants, and we financed them with municipal bonds, and we didn't have a profit. I mean, we are the apple of Alexandra's eye, the new star who claims to be a socialist. Well, hello, we've been socialists for a long, long time, and we brought cheap power to LA, and that's brought industry here. And so we ought to be thinking in terms of the fact that if you look to the future, I will bet my pension, which is really important to me, on the fact that a power system that is made up of solar and wind and backed up a bit by batteries, none of which have much operating costs, and all of which are free fuel, that over time, that is going to be cheaper than any fossil fuel power plant where all you know is the price of fuel kind of keeps going up and the price of labor keeps going up. That's the situation. Now, I have a proposal. I don't know how many minutes I have left, but I have a proposal to this board.
You've got no minutes left, so the proposal needs to be very succinct.
Order the staff to start thinking of load management is a big deal combined with efficiency, and tell them to put together a 1,000 megawatt conservation power plant that you finance and that you build one customer at a time. Sit down with the State Water Resources Board that I know rather well and negotiate a deal like I did during the past crisis, so that in the name of climate and reliability, that you be allowed to continue to operate these old gas-fired plants no more than 5% of the time, and then forget about building new ones. Join the ISO's imbalance market. Seriously, consider joining it. I mean, common sense tells you that a bigger pool is going to be more reliable. Your staff has learned the wrong lesson from 20 years ago. We need to seriously consider asking the Cal ISO, which is one of the success stories in the state, ask them for advice on how, by becoming part of a larger pool, you increase the reliability and increase the economy of being able to sell the surplus the renewable energy that you're going to have from hour to hour, and then get rid of that damn nuclear plant. Mayor Garcetti proposed getting rid of it when he was on the city council. Remind him of that. You're making spent fuel that nobody knows what to do with, and the company that owns the plant is actually lobbying against the renewable energy laws that we passed in this state. It should be a shame to be a part of any outfit like that, and you're 20% of it. And then, most important of all, tell your staff to get with it, to just forget about any new fossil or nuclear power plants. And everything new has got to be renewable if you're marching toward 100%. And if you don't, just accept the fact that you're intelligent deniers. And I know you're not. I know you'll do the right thing. And I know that your general manager will lead you in doing the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave. Hello, John. Okay.
Wow, that's an amazing necklace.
If there are any questions, I'll be glad.
Well, I don't think we want to engage in a back and forth at this point, but we
Yeah,
really
I think
appreciate
we're
it.
allowed.
We-
I don't think we're allowed.
What?
Allowed to the back and forth.
Procedurally, we have not done that with these. Let's do this. We're going to have a presentation highly linked to this. After the presentation, if commissioners want to go back and forth with those who are presenting on this subject, we can do that. But we do, I think we've heard Dave's eloquent comments, and we appreciate them a lot. And I'm going to strongly recommend that we resist the temptation to engage. We have 16 public comment cards and another 5 speakers on item 8B. I'm going to suggest that if any of the public comment cards relate to item 8B, which is scattergood repowering and transmission reliability, that you deliver your remarks after we hear the presentation on 8B. But anybody, and I'm going to also limit the 21 or 22 public comments to a minute each rather than 2 minutes because of the quantity. If your comments do not relate to 8B, you're welcome to make the public comments now. We'll ask Barbara to call the names of the speakers. If it pertains to scattergood, please wait till the presentation. If it doesn't, then come up and you'll have a minute each. So Barbara, please go over the names.
Okay, the first speaker would be David Rosenstein, and after that, Daryl Gale. David Rosenstein? Rosenstein? No? Okay, Daryl Gale?
Are you scattergood or something else?
It's
kind of general. I mean, I won't mention scattergood if you don't want me to.
Go ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Daryl. I live downtown and I came here on the electric dash bus. Recently I had a conversation with a younger acquaintance. I told her how we were working on moving LA to 100% clean energy. She immediately rolled her eyes at me and said with sarcasm, "And how do you think you're going to accomplish that?" Well, I said, we're not going to do it immediately. It's not going to be abrupt, but we are working on moving LA away from using methane, which is dirty, non-natural gas, as a bridge fuel. Our councilman at the time, Garcetti, came to the Sierra Club and said, we need to use it as a bridge fuel. Well, the bridge is gone. We don't need the bridge anymore. We need to invest in battery storage. Long Beach is doing it. San Diego is doing it. We need to do it too. Norway made it incentives for its people. They're half the population of LA County. They have 5.3 million people, and their government incentivized them to go to 50% electric cars. We can do it too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Jasmine Vargas, and after that, Lisa Hart.
I was taking after the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then Lisa Hart, and after that, Miles Lewis.
Hi, my name is Lisa Hart. I'm with the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. We have 43 member neighborhood councils across the city. We are asking that you not reinvest in gas plants. We as a city, as a state, as a country, as a planet have come to the climate change mitigation party far, far too late. And I know that what we're asking of you is very, very difficult, but I think the alternative is even more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker would be Miles Lewis, and after that, Savannah Parkinson.
All right. Hi. So I'm an LA DWP customer in Woodland Hills. I'm an arts educator, community organizer, and environmental educator working all around the San Fernando Valley. And so within that intersection, it's very apparent to me that there's an ache to live in a beautiful society that structurally embraces human creativity and health, which may be separate organizations here, but aligned with an increasingly complete relationship to nature. The public at all ages is ready for renewable energy and a whole host of other cultural reformations. So a no-go on gas plants in general, you'll be global leaders.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker would be Savannah Parkinson, and after that, Caitlin O'Neill.
Hello, my name is Savannah Parkinson. I am a resident of Inglewood, California, and I'm a student at Santa Monica College. I believe that we should not fund any more gas plants because it's kind of killing the people. Well, eventually. I'd prefer to stay alive and not breathe poisonous air. I like breath. I like breathing the clean air. It's very helpful for me. I believe it would be helpful for you as well. So I highly suggest we don't fund any more gas plants. That'll be all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker, I believe it's Caitlin O'Neill, and after that, Victor Verdun Flores. Caitlin O'Neill? Oh, okay.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin O'Neill, and I'm 16 years old. I'm a student at Van Nuys High School, and I volunteer at Valley Presbyterian Hospital. During the summer, we were greatly affected by the wildfires and the smoke that came in. We had to completely change our security protocols in order to keep the patients and the people who worked in the hospital safe. These wildfires have been increasing because of the climate change, and this is from investing in gas plants, and it needs to stop. These fires disrupt hospitals, homes, businesses, and people's lives, and it can't continue. So instead of spending $3 billion on these gas plants, I implore you to invest in clean energy for our future and all of those that follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Victor Verdun Flores, and after that, Vicky Kirschenbaum.
Good morning. My name is Victor Juan Verdun Flores, and I'm here to voice my opposition to LADWP's plan to invest $6 billion into rebuilding 3 gas-fired power plants in Southern California. This will lock Los Angeles into relying on fossil fuels for 20 to 40 more years and condemn us to further climate catastrophe. After all we know about pollution, sea level rises, and destabilization of our planet caused by fossil fuels, I cannot believe that such gentle people as yourselves, LADWP board members, Mayor Eric Garcetti, and Los Angeles elected officials would condemn us here and around the world to further climate catastrophe, environmental degradation, and the ill health and early death of thousands. You all who breathe the same air, are bathed by the same sun, are moved by the love of your children, your spouses, your pets, as all of us are, have in your hands the power to take that $6 billion and commit it to 100% renewable energy. Save the future, help your fellow man, and offset the further destruction of this planet, which is our home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Vicki Kirschenbaum, and after that, Sherry Lear.
Hi, I'm Vicki. I prefer to speak at 8B, please.
Okay, thank you. So then the next speaker would be Sherry Lear, and after that, Adele Wallace.
I'll wait till 8B is welcome.
Okay,
Thank
you
you.
Sherry?
Yeah.
Okay. Adele Wallace? Adele, oh, okay.
She's coming.
All right.
And she's doing it very gracefully.
Hi, I have been an LA DWP customer for many, many decades. I have solar panels on my roof. And this has sort of been referred to, but I just want to point out to everyone something which is really difficult for people to hear and grasp. But you've probably heard this, that the vast majority of climate scientists say we have 12 years before if we don't eliminate fossil fuels in the next 12 years, we will be facing irreversible damage to the climate. I mean, look it up. It's been very scientifically affirmed. Now, this is a hard thing, and it sounds crazy. How can we possibly eliminate fossil fuels in 12 years? Well, we have to start. And one way to start is to not keep fueling any more gas or any kind of fossil fuel plants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker would be Jane Fowler, and after that, Helen Atiri. Jane Fowler? Oh, okay.
We really need more than 1 minute, but so my name is Jane Fowler, and I live in Granada Hills. And so I was one of the people that had 100,000 metric tons of gas dumped on our community, which gives you just a rough idea. You have eye irritations, nose, chest, my hair fell out, nauseous all the time, stomach issues, throat, bones aching, lethargic, and turning into depression. Also, heart palpitations, which continue to this day, headaches, just to name a few things. My dog died. She kept having this oily coat on her, and we've only discovered recently that it was crude oil, so this is something that also was spewed from the well. I'm here to just warn you that, you know, it's horrible to go through. It affects you, and it still affects me today. And they're fugitive emissions. And please don't hold us hostage to another 40 years of, you know, fossil fuels, because we can go to clean energy. I urge you to please step outside your comfort zone, outside the box, and move us into the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Helen Atiri, and after that, Richard Dawson.
First of all, I want to tell you that I really love you. I don't know where you have been all this time. I live in Granada Hills also, and I was one of the victims of Alicia Canyon blowout. We had 100,000 tons of methane in 4 months in our community. And it was so bad that NASA said they could even see it from the space. We have been affected. My daughter has a blood disorder. We have been sick. My family has been sick, rushed to hospital. It's been awful. Last 3 years has been awful, has made me activist. I've educated myself to fight this thing. I have solar panels on my house. I know how much energy I produce myself, and I'm surprised that you guys are not pushing for that. The technology is there, and that's the route that we want to take for LA. And if you guys invest in those places that you want for you're spending $40 billion to poison us for next 40 years. Just think about that. We deserve better than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Richard Dawson, and after that, Walker Foley.
Hello, my name is Richard Dawson. I'm also a DWP customer for quite a few years. Back when you were a young man and a representative, you were my representative in Torrance. But today we have a new problem. You mentioned externalities that someday are going to become your internal expenses, but right now your externalities are my future. We have 12 years. 12 years. You don't get there if you don't start now, because 12 years is like that much time. So do not invest in any more fossil fuel plants anywhere, period. We've got to make the transition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Richard Dawson, and after that, Walker Foley. Oh, I'm sorry, Walker Foley, and then...
Good morning, Board of Commissioners. My name is Walker Foley. I am the senior organizer with Food and Water Watch. My colleague Alexandra, who some of you know can't be here today because she's dealing with rapid response because there has been a gas blowout over in Playa del Rey, SoCal Gas's facility, and she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on in the situation. And you heard from community leaders Jane and Helen already, who had a blowout in their community. We have to conclude that gas is not a safe fuel. From leaking in the pipes, from leaking in transportation, from blowing out of storage facilities, and if it makes it to its end destination, we then burn it into the atmosphere. David here, and I feel like I could just conclude all my thoughts with what David said, but David here used an interesting phrase, intelligent deniers. And for us to invest ourselves in more fossil fuel infrastructure when we know the state of California's goals, when we know the dire warning that the IPCC has given us on phasing out fossil fuels or else, the choice becomes so clear. And I was at the Women's March on Saturday. I was out with a crew of people collecting petition signatures, calling on this board, calling on City Council, and above all, calling on Mayor Garcetti, whom you were all appointed by to sit on this board. Telling all of y'all, no more gas plants. And there was not a single person of hundreds that we talked to who disagreed with that. We talked to 8-year-olds, we talked to 15-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 63-year-olds. The choice is so simple for the people of Los Angeles, and I hope it is so simple for this board and this mayor. No more gas plants. Let's use this money and invest in the renewable energy future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Elliot Gonzalez, and after that, Danielle Reynolds.
I'll go after.
You on 8B?
Yes, please.
Okay. And then the next speaker then would be Danielle Reynolds.
Hello. Thank you for creating space for the public to speak at this meeting. I really appreciate it. I understand that there's basically two categories of logical reasoning that fall behind the impulse to reinvest in gas plants. One is reliability of service. We don't want people to be reliably without service. So, I mean, what are we really worried about there? We're worried about angry phone calls from people. I think I'm here to say that it's pretty clear what the people want, and what actually makes us angry and frightened is investing in things that are killing us and making it frightful to bring children into this world. So there's that. And the other category that it falls into seems to be convenience. It's much easier and simpler to think about reinvesting in that which we're used to investing in. And nobody ever said it was going to be easy. Nobody ever said it's going to be convenient and just simple to switch over to renewable energy, but it is better. It's better for our future. My husband and I are planning our family right now, and we are terrified to bring children into a world where 12 years from now it's going to be too late for them to have a future. So I urge you to think in the long term and not the short term. Think about the long-term benefits and not the short-term glory of having reliable service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the David Rosenstein, who I called in the beginning. Is he back in the room?
I'm also a DWP ratepayer for a long time. I'm here to add my voice to David Freeman's comments and everybody else in this room that now is the time to act. We can't wait any longer. We have to take a leadership role. There's no more messing around. This is where the rubber hits the road. And the city is depending on you people to do the right thing. As David said, everybody in the room knows what the right thing is, so please do it.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the last speaker for item 2. The others will be with 8B.
Okay, very good. Thank you all for your comments, and also thank you for making them succinct. And they were very clear, even though they were succinct. General Manager.
Yeah, 3 things. The first is that in order to increase the capability for the public to make comments on our topics and at our meetings, we've added a new feature that allows the public to make a comment online. We post it's basically an e-comment feature, helps promote transparency and access to board meetings, because we know there are some that can't make it to downtown LA, and there's other people in Bishop that may want to contribute comments and can't make it to the Bishop meeting or the podium up there. So here's how it works. Each time the agenda is posted online 3 days in advance of a board meeting, customers or stakeholders can submit a comment or an e-comment on any agenda item under the board's jurisdiction. And the website is www.ledwp.com/board. And the e-comment period opens at 10 a.m. on the Saturday before the meeting and closes on the Monday at 6 p.m. Before the meeting. And prior to the meeting, we will distribute the comments to all of the board members. Right now, you have one at your seat. Only one person commented, and you have that today at your seats. And again, the goal here is so that we can increase transparency and allow the public another avenue at which they can make comments. The next item, just a real brief item before I turn it over to Reiko. With so many people here, you might consider 8B, taking that as the first item when we do the reports. And then finally, there was about a week ago catastrophic failure to the Adelanto converter station, and that does impact our system. And Reiko's just going to spend a couple moments explaining what happened and why that has such an impact and what the results of that can be.
So minor clarification, we have Robert Fick here, who is the manager of hydro and renewable generation, as well as the high voltage stations. And he will discuss the catastrophic event that Dave talked about that occurred on January 12th, and take us through what
Okay,
occurred.
good morning, Commissioners. I'll move by the computer, and I have a short presentation to share. And this is just a briefing on the transformer failure that occurred a week ago Saturday. First, a bit of background. Southern Transmission System, LEDWP, is the operating agent of the 492-mile-long HVDC transmission line that runs from Delta, Utah to Adelanto, California. And power transmitted on this line supplies LEDWP and 5 other municipal utilities. So a little bit different. It's a DC line. It's got 2 lines. Each line is capable of transmitting power, 1,200 megawatts of power, for a total capacity of 2,400 megawatts, which essentially, if you consider 2 kilowatts per home, that's power for 1.2 million homes. At the end of each line, there's a converter station that converts power from AC to DC or DC to AC. Each converter station has a total of 6 large converter transformers, 3 for each converter. This is an overview of Adelanto Converter Station, which is the southern terminal. So just some key points on the failure. Failure occurred on January 12th. It was catastrophic. As a result of the failure, we lost 50% of our transmission capacity, which now is down to 1,200 megawatts during this outage. On that particular day, the power was under 1,000 megawatts. So the good news is, fortunately, winter loads are low. So when line 1 tripped offline, line 2 was able to pick up the rest of the load. So there was no load lost at the time of this event. But if this had occurred in the summer, on a summer weekday, the outcome would have been different. Thankfully, there was no visual external damage to the transformer. The explosion was contained inside the tank. There was roughly 20 to 40 gallons of oil that was expelled from the transformer. It got on the transformer. It remained in the oil containment system designed for events like that, and our Adelanto staff has cleaned all that up. So station test engineering reports that the fault current was about 30,000 amps. So what does that mean? 30,000 amps, 500,000 volts is a tremendous amount of energy. So this transformer is about 75, 80 yards away from the control building. At the time of the failure, the operations staff said that when they heard the explosion, it shook the control building from about 80 yards away. So it was a very devastating failure. Preliminary testing indicates that the insulation has failed. We don't know the extent of the damage. We're going to have to do an internal inspection, which will be done in the future. Now, we need to report that this was the 3rd converter transformer failure of this type since 2011. First one was 2011, the second one was 2017. Several root cause analyses were performed by both LEDWP and third-party experts in the field. Unfortunately and frustratingly, no single cause of failure could be established. The difference on the other 2 failures compared to this one, there was external damage, there was a tank breach, there was oil leak, and there was fire. Fortunately, this did not occur here. I think it's safe to say, with 3 failures in 8 years, and they've been in service since 1983, they're at the end of their useful life and need to be replaced, and we're working towards that. So here's a picture of the transformer that failed. Again, no external damage visual that we can see. If you look at the picture on the right, that discoloration is some of the oil that spewed out of the pressure relief valve that's designed to do that. We do have a spare. Fortunately, the spare arrived at Adelanto in December of this year. It's not yet fully assembled. Another spare has been procured and is due for delivery in April. These transformers are long lead items. They typically take 1 to 2 years to procure. So the process of isolating and removing the failed transformer, we have to assemble, we have to move, reconnect, and test the new transformer. We'll take a small army of DWP personnel, electrical mechanics, engineers, technicians. Need to take great care to do the job right, and it'll take them about 2 months to complete this work. And then finally, the reality is this. We have to make up 1,200 megawatts somehow for system reliability. How we do that today is that we rely on our foreign basin generating stations, as well as energy purchases from other entities when that's available. So if these resources aren't available, then system reliability may be in jeopardy. With that concludes my briefing. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments?
I just have 2 quick questions.
Yeah.
You stated that there were 3 failed transformers since 2011.
Correct.
Has that trend gone up or down compared to what we've experienced?
The trend is definitely up since 2011. Prior to that, we had no failures.
And where are we in terms of budgeting for investments to replace aging transformers? Can you maybe elaborate a little bit about
So in addition to the spares that we purchased, yeah, we've accounted for the budgeting. So we have one spare that's going to be put into service here in 2 months, another spare that will be standby in the event of another failure. The process is, as part of the STS upgrade, which is due to be completed by 2025, these transformers will be replaced, and replaced with a design that better fits the system conditions today. So that's in the works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, other comments? Thank you very much.
Mr. President, thank you.
That's it. Comments from commissioners on agendized items and requests from commissioners relating to departmental operations.
I will have my comments after the presentations.
Okay, others?
That's number 4. Is that where you are?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have a comment. I would
We
like
would like to hear your comment.
Okay. I would just like to commend Louis Ting from the Power Department, and also Jason Stinnett from Public Relations, who both came to the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils last week and made a presentation. Louis was just really a terrific presenter. It was a complex subject, and he made it clear. There were a lot of questions and a lot of discussion afterwards, so I think that was good that he was able to be there and to answer. And Jason also would answer when he felt it was necessary. And if he didn't know the answer, he would tell the neighborhood council representatives that he would get back to them. And his response has been terrific. I mean, usually by the next morning, he's emailed the president of that neighborhood council with the information that they asked. So I think that they both should be commended for, they were really great representatives of DWP. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ratepayer advocate.
I'll be presenting item 8E, and if there are any questions that might come up in the other presentations, that would be appropriate for me to address, ask them as part of that presentation.
Great. Barbara, discussion with neighborhood council representatives on any neighborhood council resolution or community impact statement filed with the city clerk, which relate to any agenda item listed or being considered on this agenda for the Water and Power Board.
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
We'll quickly go through monthly reports and approval of the minutes and the consent calendar, and then we'll go back. Then we will do Scattergood. 9A, Power System Monthly Report, November.
The board, it's in your packet, and if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? December.
Same thing.
Same thing. Any questions? RPS, November.
Same thing.
RPS, December.
Same thing.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the board meeting of January 8th with Commissioners Levine, McLean, Hill, Noonan, and Vasquez present?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
They're approved. Taking the general manager's suggestion, we will go to Scattergood, but first let's just look at items on the agenda to see which of those can be approved on consent. We have to remove items 17 and 18 because I need to recuse on each of those. So those items eligible to be approved on consent are items 11 through 16 and 19.
We do have a speaker card, I think, for item 14.
We have a speaker card for item 14.
I also had questions relating to item 14.
14, okay. So we'll pull item 14. Do any commissioners wish to pull any of the other items from consent? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve items 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, and 19?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
Those items are approved, in case any of you were waiting for those items. You don't need to wait. And we will take item 8B out of order at this time. Management report for Scattergood repowering and transmission reliability. Who will present the report?
Thank you. The report will be presented by several individuals. I just want to give a very short intro. At last meeting's presentation that we had looking at in-basin generation, there were a number of questions, and we had mentioned that the Bill Barlick, who made the presentation, I think made easy to understand. There were a number of questions, and we thought before we lost him, and this will be the last meeting at where he's before he retires, they would come basically respond to the questions you had last time and some of the comments in basically some basin generation and transmission reliability items that the board had requested more information or had questions on. So while he'll be up there, basically the same team, again, responding to what requests or inquiries there were last time, will make a presentation.
There's someone who looks a lot like him who just came into the back of the room.
So I'll turn it over to Reiko, who will introduce the group.
Yes, as we continue this conversation, we do have Bill Barlack for the last 10 days of his almost 4-decade career.
Presentation item is this?
8. This will be 8B.
Oh, so he's on Scattergood.
Well, Bill will do one last presentation as his swan song. He is the manager of system reliability studies. Also joining him at the podium, although she needs no introduction, will be Nancy Sutley, our director of sustainability, and she will discuss the department's efforts and actions to significantly ramp up renewable resources, energy storage, energy efficiency, including those acquisitions and projects that the board has previously approved, and new projects that are currently planned or under consideration. And I apologize, the agenda says Scattergood repowering, and this isn't so much focused on Scattergood, more as in-basin generation and transmission, and how the two are related as we try to mitigate events we have on our system. So with that, I will turn it over to Nancy and Bill.
Thank you.
It subsumes Scattergood.
So this is item AB?
8B.
And I'm sorry, Bill, what is your last name again?
Barlack, B-A-R-L-A-K.
Thanks.
Okay, so as Reiko said, we'll try to answer some of the questions that came up around some of the other programs that are underway. So, okay, so if we go just first slide, this just summarizes the level of effort around energy efficiency. The board set a goal to achieve 15% of our cumulative retail sales through energy efficiency by 2020, and we are on track to do that. And we've budgeted roughly $200 million a year for the next few years. The approved budget plus $20 million that the board added recently to address insulation and a number of other things that get to multifamily and disadvantaged communities. So we continue to make good progress on energy efficiency. And one thing I'd just add is that the world doesn't stop in 2020, but that we will continue past 2020 with similar levels of effort to reduce demand. So you go to the next slide. This just tries to look at both historical and projected investment in renewable energy projects. And you can see starting in 2002 through this year, so far the department has invested about $4 billion in renewable energy, and this includes not just the renewable portfolio standard kind of compliant resources, but other things, including some of the local solar and others. And then going forward, you can see the projections are that the investments have ramped up significantly since 2010 and will continue to ramp up through the 2020s, and anticipate that we'll invest an additional $12.4 billion in renewable energy through 2028, and that will result in a total expenditure from 2002 to 2028 of about $16 billion. And this is just looking at sort of the kinds of both current and projections for solar energy on the system. You'll be familiar with the 4 different programs, the customer programs, both the solar incentive and net metering, the feed-in tariff, community solar programs that are underway, and of course utility scale. And if you look out through, this is through the end of the planning. This is based on the 2016 IRP out to 2036. You'll see that that we're looking at about, I can't even read this, about 4,000 additional 4,000 megawatts total by 2035 of both utility scale solar and local solar. Go to the next page, looking at other renewable energy sources, wind, hydro, and geothermal. We're looking at both in service and under construction, and in discussion about 4,000 megawatts total. We have almost 1,000 megawatts of wind energy agreements and projects in the last 12 years. They are geographically diverse to take advantage of both the wind resources and transmission. And we're looking at some additional wind energy from, including some new ones from New Mexico and Wyoming. When it comes to geothermal and biomass, we have over 300 megawatts in service and under construction, and geographically diverse sets of geothermal resources, and a number of small hydro in service that is eligible to be considered for the renewable portfolio standard. And additionally, we have large hydro, which is not part of the renewable portfolio standard, but is zero carbon, and that is from Castaic and from Hoover.
Nancy, can you explain, I think you did explain, but I don't remember, why is it that it was determined, I guess by the Energy Commission, I'm not sure who makes these determinations, why is it that the large hydro is not considered eligible for RPS?
Well, I think the idea was that you wanted to encourage other sources of renewable energy, and so there was no effort to try to get rid of any large hydro, but that it wouldn't count towards the new. I think the other concern generally has been that the large hydro projects have significant environmental impacts, and that rather than continuing to make investments in new large hydro that would result in those environmental impacts, to try to really provide an incentive and a push towards developing other renewable energy sources.
Okay.
And then also wanted to provide some information about where we are with respect to energy storage. Again, what's in service, what's under construction, what is planned. As you can see, we have a significant amount of energy storage, much of it from the hydro pump storage at Castaic, which has been recently upgraded to provide more storage capability. The Beacon Energy Storage System has come online in 2018, and it is fully integrated into the system. It's being used in a number of different ways to provide services around the system. DWP has already also invested in microgrids, which I know we've talked a little bit about at Fire Station 28 up in the valley, and also at the La Cretz Innovation Campus. And we have a number of other energy storage projects that are in the planning process or are in progress, including here at the JFB, and also some utility scale battery energy storage that will be combined with solar project. So that'll give for 4-hour 200 megawatts, about 800 megawatt hours of storage, and then combined with a large scale solar project. And you've heard some about the feasibility study underway looking at Hoover. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
So our vision is to get to a 100% clean future, obviously. And the goal is to eliminate all the basin gas-fired generation. And like I said last time, because basin transmission was never intended to be reliably operated without those basin gas-fired plants, DWP is going to have to completely re-engineer, that is, redesign and reconstruct our basin transmission system in order to maximize the amount of power that it can transmit in order to reliably operate without those gas-fired plants. As I said last time, DWP is under the jurisdiction of the federal NERC standards. In fact, those standards mandate how we operate our transmission system. Those standards do not dictate how we operate our distribution system, but they do dictate how we operate our transmission system. DWP must comply with these standards to ensure and demonstrate through evidence that under all conditions, an outage of any generator or line does not jeopardize the grid. And I'm going to talk about what outage means in the next slide or so. The grid, any event that occurs on our power system, in theory, could jeopardize the grid because all the utilities are connected to that grid. We are preparing right now for an audit that's going to occur next year at this time, that will ensure our compliance with these federal standards. So our evidence is audited in detail every 3 years. The penalty for non-compliance, like I said last time, is up to $1 million. For example, in September 2011, the Southwest blackout started with a single misoperation of a single line. And it resulted in a widespread blackout in Arizona and Southern California, affecting ultimately 7 million people. For their part in this blackout, the Imperial Irrigation District was assessed a $12 million penalty. Arizona Public Service was assessed a penalty of $3.25 million. California ISO incurred a penalty of $6 million. WEC, the Western Electricity Coordinating Council, who at the time was functioning as the reliability coordinator for the Western U.S., incurred a penalty of $16 million. So one event wound up costing entities almost $40 million. We're going to talk about the concept of what an outage is. I think we're going to talk about that in the next few slides that I have left, but we're going to talk about an outage. What is an outage? That's when a line or a generator unexpectedly, instantly, and automatically is turned off due to its failure to prevent its permanent damage. Now, I want to draw a distinction between planned outages and unplanned outages. We work on our transmission system all the time to maintain it, to upgrade it, and to repair it. Anytime we do, we have to take that equipment and turn it off. That is a planned outage. What I'm going to talk about in these next several slides will be called unplanned outages, things that are a surprise. that are unexpected and can happen anytime. We have more than 850 miles of basin transmission, not counting our external. These outages can last minutes, days, or months. We have most of our basin transmission are about 25 miles long, but we have lines up to 600 miles long in our external system. And we must report all of our outages to federal authorities. And you may be wondering, how many basin transmission outages, how many outages has DWP had over the last 5 years? Here's a little bar graph that shows you that. 157 outages over the last 5 years.
Planned or unplanned?
These are outages that are unplanned. These are surprises to us. These occurred without any foreknowledge on our part. These are things that just happened out of the blue because of a failure, or because we got the word there was an imminent failure. So these...
We got the word that what?
We might have gotten the word that there would have been an imminent failure had we not taken action. Now, that's 31 outages per year, or 2 or 3 outages per month. These aren't just a few lines that kept having problems. 65% of our basin lines were affected by outages, unplanned outages, over this 5-year period. Just to kind of mention again what I said last time, these are transmission circuits. They are not distribution circuits. These are the freeways of our energy system, not the surface streets. So when you close a freeway, it can affect hundreds of thousands of people, and very much so, transmission outages have the potential to affect hundreds of thousands of Angelenos.
I'm sorry, and how much does this cost ratepayers?
I'm sorry?
How much did ratepayers have to pay for these outages?
That's the next push of the button. They didn't even notice. On any of these transmission outages, they didn't even notice. Why didn't they notice? Before I move on, though, I want to point something out. On this curve, if you'll notice that it looks like we've had more and more outages as time goes on. It's actually a statistical anomaly in this case. Back when we started doing this in 2014, we had to review handwritten logs manually to determine what outages took place. In 2015 in 2016 and 2017 and 18, we have an automated process that does this. So we're actually it looks like we have more outages. What's going on is we're actually being able to capture all of them and not miss any of them. So back in 2014, 2015, we might have missed a few.
So the penalty up to $1 million per day per violation
doesn't affect this. Doesn't affect this. I'm sorry, that's the answer. If that was your question, yeah, we didn't pay anything for these. But the fact that we have 45, 55, and 33, when you average those out over the last 3 years, it's 3 or 4 outages per month, not 2 or 3. But the customers didn't notice. Why didn't they notice? Because there's a tremendous amount of work done behind the scenes to ensure compliance with the standards and to maintain continuity of service despite the outages. And I've been at our control center as an engineer and a manager for the last 31 years, and to my knowledge and in my experience, that the loss of a single transmission line has never resulted in the loss of any customer load, of any customer demand, the loss of any transmission system. I'm going to show you what this behind the scenes work looks like and give you an example of a recent outage. There's a West LA transmission line. It failed on December 20th, 2018, 5 days before Christmas. It's these lines right here, one of those lines right there. The outage happened. What was our response to that outage? First thing is to make sure that we maintain continuity of service, that our customers come first, and that this transmission outage would not affect them. That's the first thing. Second job is to contain the effects of this outage on the grid. The last thing we need is for the effects of this outage to spread to other parts of the grid, and we wind up with another Southwest Alaska. That's not something we want. We want to avoid that at all costs. So our next job is to contain the effects. I'll talk about that in some detail coming up. The final thing we do is to try to determine the cause of the outage. Why did this line or this generator fail? And once we determine that, we can estimate the length of the outage. Now, what I'm going to do is tell you that this outage took about a month to repair. There was a failure in an underground transmission circuit. It took 1 month to repair. It was just restored last Friday, January 18th. Now, to answer the question about the detail that you asked last time, we're going to take a zoom in on this area of Los Angeles right here that I'm looking at right now. That's West Los Angeles. And just to provide you a little bit of background, the circles are the receiving stations. Those are the places where the customers are directly fed from. Those are the places, there are 4 stations in West LA that feed customer demand directly. And you can see these heavy black lines are the transmission lines that connect these stations to each other. And the red arrows, last time I said, our power flows from north to south, and indeed that's true here too. So the power flows north to south, as shown by those arrows. Now let's say that we have an outage, and this is an unplanned outage. This is something that's a surprise to us. And that line right there is removed. So that line right there is turned off. The first thing that happens is that the power flowing on these transmission lines is now disturbed, if you will, or disrupted. That power that was flowing on the line that's now red, that line's turned off, that power has been disrupted. But the customers don't even know it. The customers do not even see that. Why? Well, the good news is that just by the laws of physics, because the power was reduced on this path and the customers were still pulling power out of our grid in West Los Angeles, the power on this path increased. And it can result in an overload. We can withstand overloads for an hour or 2. But if they're longer than that, we have to take some action. And that's what we did is we turned on scattergood generation down here, and we served the local load at these 4 receiving stations by turning on scattergood generation. So by serving that customer demand locally, the imports into the West LA area were able to decrease, and we were able to reduce the overload and ultimately eliminate it. Now, this is true for scattergood, obviously, but we have these kind of issues throughout the basin. And we have these kind of transmission constraints throughout the basin. And all local basin generation is the reason customers are unaware of the 2 to 3 or even 3 to 4 basin transmission outages DWP experiences every month. So in summary, what we want to say is that we have a journey in front of us. Senate Bill 100 is the law of the land indeed, and DWP is committed to transitioning to a 100% clean energy future while providing reliability service during this transition. A successful journey must include the re-engineering, that is the redesign and reconstruction of our legacy basin transmission system into something that we've never seen before, something brand new.
Yay.
But, and that's what DWP wants to do. However, we got to turn the lines off in order to accommodate this. To increase their capability, make them more flexible, we must turn the lines off in order to reconstruct them. And just like I've said in the last couple of slides, basin generation maintains reliability in our transmission system whether a line is turned off for reconstruction, as I've just mentioned, or due to its failure. It's the same situation physically. So basin generation is critical to future reliability while DWP transitions to 100% clean energy future. Any questions?
Well, before we do questions, I think what we ought to do is hear the public comment from the speakers who wanted to speak. We'll have all of that, and then we'll have an exchange. So Barbara, go ahead and call those who wanted to speak on this item.
Okay. The first speaker is Jasmine Vargas, and after that, Vicki Kirschenbaum.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jasmine Vargas. I'm with Food and Water Watch, senior organizer working in LA. But as you might remember, I've been working on clean energy issues and energy democracy at this utility since 2012. I appreciate the presentation given today, and I really understand and hear and that you all are really interested and are ready for 100%, just like we all are. We came out today with ratepayers represented by LADWP that want to be part of that 100% clean energy future. And however, we don't want to see it on the backs of poor and vulnerable populations living next to these gas plants that are suffering from pollution. And we don't want to do it in a slow and measured time pace, knowing the urgency of the issue in front of us. And I have a couple of questions as well, but because I only have 1 minute, I want all of us to really consider that we don't need to keep these gas plants to provide that backup energy for the transmission lines. We could do it with energy storage. We could do it with distributed generation and local solar. We could do it with efficiency and conservation. And you have us to back you up to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Vicki Kirschenbaum, and after that, Sherry Lear.
Hi, thanks for this opportunity to speak today. A decade ago, when environmental activists advocated for solar and wind power, the argument against renewables always was, well, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. If only we could store that energy. What a long way we have come. About 30 miles outside of downtown San Diego sits the largest lithium-ion battery storage facility in North America, owned and operated by San Diego Gas and Electric. The future has arrived, and this is the kind of forward-looking project LADWP needs to invest in. The costs of energy storage are plummeting, along with the price of solar and the price of wind. Instead of putting billions of dollars into rebuilding Haynes Harbor and Scattergood plants, LADWP should invest in battery storage, energy efficiency upgrades, and utility-scale solar. Why would the largest public utility in the United States saddle itself with outdated technology, tether itself to a fuel that every respected scientist in the world insists must stay buried in the ground if we want to have a fighting chance at slowing climate change? Turn your backs on gas.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Sherry Lear, and after that, Elliot Gonzalez.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Lear. I'm a resident of San Pedro, so I'm under DWP territory. And I've been fighting against coal and natural gas power going back to 2009, before Auer was even on the Beyond Coal campaign. So I'm just really shocked that we're talking about repowering these plants and locking us into 40 more years of fossil fuel infrastructure. Since the time that I started working on this issue, the prices for renewable energy have gone down, the battery storage, technology has increased. I mean, they just built a huge amount of battery storage in Australia in record time. I don't want to have to, worry about my son, when he's outside in some of the worst air quality in the United States, that on top of that, he could, suffer from the effects of what happened something like what happened in Aliso Canyon. So I'm really, asking you guys to look forward and not feel that we're locked into these gas plants. We can do better. We must do better for our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Elliot Gonzalez, and after that, Donald Stemp.
Hi, my name is Elliot Gonzalez. I'm with the organization called Stop Fracking Long Beach. We're working to put a ban on fracking, not only in Long Beach, but throughout the state of California. We're greatly concerned about climate change and the future of our future, basically, the future of our air, the future of water, whether or not we will have a future, a livable planet, a sustainable planet. So the reason why we're here, the reason why I came out here today was I know they're planning on building the Haynes facility in Long Beach. We already have enough pollution. We already have enough poison. We already have high rates of heart disease, cancer, asthma. These are people who go through these symptoms, who go through the suffering because of the pollution that we already have. So burning fossil fuel, especially if it was fracked natural gas, polluting somebody else just so you could poison my neighborhood to keep the lights on, it's unreasonable. We're not going to stand for it. We're going to fight whoever wants to build this project every step of the way. We're going to give them hell for our children. So you guys can either fight us or you can go green. 100% renewable energy now.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Donald Stemp, and after that, David Gaines.
Hello, thank you for having us. I just wanted to come because this felt like the biggest bang for our buck in regards to climate change is shutting down these gas plants. And like this young man said, I think we all know what the right thing to do is. And I just wanted to add that with electric cars, there's more people can have their own batteries, so they'll have there's more microgrids that will be coming online in the next few years. People will have even their own backup generation right in their driveways. And my cousin just told me that in Santa Barbara, the people from Edison are knocking on their doors saying, we need to hit these goals. Do you want to have solar on your roof? And it's cheaper, or, it's a little cheaper, and he doesn't have to put anything up front. So I don't understand why there's not more just materials going out to customers saying, hey, California, we need to do this. You all know we need to do this. These are the options for solar. And if there's going to be more outages, this will protect you and the rest of the city and the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is David Gaines, and after that, Dave Rock.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Gaines. I'm a longtime resident of the city, ratepayer. I appreciate the years of service you put in to keep our grid running, and I don't like it when the lights go off any more than anyone else. But we got to look at the future, and there has to be a balance struck between what we can expect from DWP in terms of reasonable reliability versus the ongoing climate change. And I think we just have to look at the hole we're in, and we have to stop digging. That's really what we got to do. It's tough, but we got to make the choice.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Dave Rock, and after that, Ronald Goldstein.
Hi, my name is Dave Rock. I can't say things probably as eloquently as some of the other speakers have, so maybe I'll change tacks a little bit and just talk about leadership. And this is Los Angeles, and we're California, and if we're going to throw up our hands and say we can't do it, then everyone's going to, who can? Like, I think that we could be a shining beacon of hope and, lead the way in showing people how we can get rid of these obsolete, gas-powered plants and look towards the future. And, there'll be challenges and risks and costs, of course, but there will probably never be a perfect time to do it. And we will back you up. We will support you, and we'll put up with a lot as long as we know that, everyone's trying to do better for our future. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ronald Goldstein. After that, Gavin Pierce.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm here to support the sentiments of Mr. Freeman and others who have asked for a push on renewable energy and an abandonment of gas-powered plants. I support that issue fully. I also understand that the big part of the issue is not how much power we need, but when we get that power, that there's a duck curve that we need to straighten out, and that I would like to encourage the Commission to invest in short-term localized lithium batteries, as well as compressed air energy storage on a larger scale that can be built in Utah and easily imported into LA to support the fast ramping of energy when we need it. And I appreciate your openness towards looking toward renewable energies and for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Gavin Pierce, and after that, Tracy Watson.
Hello, my name is Gavin Pierce. I am a student and community organizer with SoCal 350 Climate Action and the Sunrise Movement. And I want to ask the Board of Commissioners to use this money to invest in a clean energy future, to oppose even the consideration of continuing our reliance on fossil fuels. Because we can't afford it. We have to change the discussion on what climate change really is. We have to address it in its full scale, and it's something that costs lives. It's something that destabilizes economies, threatens futures of young people like myself. And the actions we're taking today set strings of events in motion that we won't be able to reverse when it comes down to it. And so it's odd to me to even be up here talking about, you know, whether or not LA is going to be investing this money in fossil fuels, because the answer to that question seems like it should be obvious. Like, I don't know how we can even be thinking about it. So having said all of that, I want to thank some of the green leadership that there is on the commission. Commissioner Vasquez, thank you for taking the stand on this issue. And yeah, I hope that the rest of the board will continue to see the issue in the same scope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Tracy Watson, and after that, Tom Pike.
Tracy Watson was trying to run from the job. She can't get there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then after that, next is Tom Pike, and then after that, Eric Eilenberger.
I have a point of order. I'm here in my capacity as an official representative of Los Feliz Neighborhood Council. Is this the correct time to speak, and how much time do I have?
This is fine. You have a minute.
Great, thank you. The Los Feliz Neighborhood Council unanimously passed a resolution against the proposal to repower these gas plants. I do not have time to read the entire resolution, so I will read you the...
You can submit the full resolution also. We'll take a look at it.
Okay, how do I do that?
You can hand it to one of the officers.
When you're done speaking, give it to the officer behind you, and he'll...
Okay, all right, thank you. I hope this doesn't count toward my time. Resolved that the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council hereby opposes the LADWP plan to repower the gas-fired plants at Scattergood, Harbor, and Haines, opposes the use of gas in any future power plants that feed the grid of the City of Los Angeles, supports the LADWP plan to harness the potential of the Hoover Dam as pumped water energy storage, and finds that the impending obsolescence of these gas plants is an opportunity to invest the upfront costs of repowering these gas plants instead and creating the green economy of the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Eric Eilenberger. You had submitted a card for 14, but you don't want 14?
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Okay, so it should be for this one. Okay, thank you.
I apologize. Thank you very much. I am LADWP account number 046005100. Prior to it disappearing from the screen, your logo had the slogan, customers first. As a customer, a long-time customer, I thought you would be concerned to know that I am expecting my first child this April, and before you congratulate me, I would like you to know that I wake up in dread on a regular basis because I fear the implications of climate change and what they will be for my daughter. Now, these were some wonderful reports we've heard here today. There was another report that interested me a great deal that was published in the journal Nature just last week. It said that we have a 64% chance of meeting the Paris Climate Accord agreements to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius.
But that is only if, beginning with calendar year 2019, we decommission all existing fossil fuel infrastructure at the end of its usable lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was
And
the last card.
congratulations on your upcoming child.
That was the last card I had.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just make a couple closing comments. I want to really thank Bill Barlak for presenting what I think is a lot of complicated information in a way that we can understand it. And it is complex running a system. And the other part, today's discussion wasn't about where the power comes from, but the fact that we need power at certain points in our system. Transmission upgrades and power supply types are still being discussed and need to be discussed and strategies developed. But today was to answer the questions on how does a grid work, how does the transmission play in, and to provide, again, some of that feedback as to what you'd requested last time, and getting what I think has been one of the best presenters of a complex system and situation here in public to make that discussion. Fantastic job. Thank you.
I second that. Commissioners, Commissioner Vasquez.
Oh, thank you. I guess you read my mind. Okay, well. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you for coming here. This is your second or third time that you're here?
Second time.
With us. Thank you. This presentation reminded me a lot of the last presentation that you were present, so I appreciate the reinforcement. And in this presentation, one of the things that struck me is that you have mentioned many times that our grid is not designed per se for the future. It's designed for what it is now, which is hosting fossil fuels and the way that things are. This isn't your fault, of course, or neither mine. This is just the way things have been. So we have learned, and a lot of the public has learned, and also we commissioners have learned also about the cases on Scattergood. And now with your presentation, I have a few questions. And I'm not sure if you can answer them, but we'll get folks that can answer. So in here, in slide number 6, if you want to return there, you talk about some in progress and planned battery storage. And it says here 2 kilowatts and 200 megawatts of some sort of combined, energy storage, let's say, in general. So what's the total goal that we have today for battery storage for LADWP? Would you remind me?
With that, maybe we can bring up Louis Ting, the Director of Power Planning and Development and Engineering, who is in charge of our strategic long-term resource plan and all the resource acquisition in the future.
Thank you. Rico.
Good morning, Commissioners, Commissioner President. To answer that question is based on the current SLTRP that was approved last year is 404 megawatts until 2025. That's energy storage in general.
Okay.
And obviously with the 1 through cooling study that has recommendations from cases 1 through 12, there are additional energy storage recommendations that will be studied further in this year's 2018 Strategic Long-Term Resource Plan. That's going to essentially evaluate those cases along with our existing 404 megawatts of energy storage.
Thank you. So we have 404 megawatts of energy storage in a city of the magnitude of Los Angeles. In your opinion, as an expert that you are in the subject of renewables, do you think that's an ambitious goal?
Based on what we have today is 1,500 megawatts, and we're also evaluating Boulder Canyon, which is Hoover, one of the speakers mentioned. That's potentially additional thousands of megawatts of energy storage. What the speakers today and also what the Mr. Bill Barlak mentioned is that transmission is the key to success for all of these resources, including energy storage.
Right.
So the journey is about that, the transmission.
Yeah. He also mentioned that in-basin generation is very important. And making sure that in-basin that we have enough to, so that we can continue powering our phones and our computers and such. So I'm mentioning this because in New York, for example, in a utility similar to ours, their goal is 1,500 megawatts today. Now, with a study of, retiring T3 gas plants or not, this is their goal today. And another thing that I have been looking at is that we have goals, but we don't have programs that can expedite our goals on storage adoption. So I think that we can have a lot of goals. One of my 2019 goals is to exercise more, and I can tell you, I have not been very successful so far. So, goals without a plan or without accountability, I'm mentioning this because I want to instruct staff to figure out how these goals can be more robust, because I do believe that energy storage and distributed generation and microgrids and such are going to help with what the presenter today was mentioning, which is help us with in-basin generation. And here is the thing. We are in uncharted territories. I get it. We are in a new era. We are headed to renewables that for some people might view unreliable, and they might be costly. The way that we pay for our energy when we pay for renewables is a little different than when we pay for gas or for fossil fuel. So I'm trying to figure out how to reinvent the way that we do business and that we relate with our new sources of energy, and not just building a bunch of transmission and bringing it from other places, which might be more cost effective, but it doesn't help us with our goals of workforce development here in Los Angeles, bringing investments in Los Angeles, and also helping us with greenhouse gas emissions and all the other good stuff that we love about the environment. But for me, it's about the investments in this community and how we're going to figure out how to do both. It doesn't need to be one. It can be both and I think that that's what I hear from a lot of the public here, asking for to really look at these 3 gas plants, and especially at Scattergood. I also want to instruct staff, and you, David, right? You have done a very beautiful job showing us the issues. Please show us the path. Show us how to get there. I think that it's clear that we're going to have to make investments, and I think the community here and a lot of us can agree that we're willing to make those investments, and that we're willing to change, and we're willing to study something different. So we have learned now, this is the second time that reliability is an issue, that we need transmission, like all this stuff that are intricate, like so important for us to get to where we want to be. So now show us the way on how to get where we want to be, or tell us who to talk to. So I think that's I have some other points, but I think I'm going to leave it as that for now. Thank you.
Other commissioners?
Yeah, actually, I did have something I wanted to say. So first and foremost, I wanted to also compliment Mr. Barlock on his presentation, and to acknowledge that I have been one of the commissioners that has been advocating for a much more robust public airing of issues related to transmission and distribution, so that as we continue to think about our shared goals and values around getting to 100% clean energy, that we're looking at all of the issues that are necessary for us to confront as partners. And when I say as partners, this isn't just a DWP sort of staff issue. It's not just an issue of elected officials, but I mean, the dirty little secret is that this is going to be very costly. And among the people that have to be willing to lean in and to support our efforts, and they will be substantial, will be our ratepayers. And so we have to be transparent and robust, and to recognize that not everybody knows what the answer is. There may be some very, very well-credentialed and engaged advocates and experts who are clear about what we have to do next. But building public will is going to require that we present a very transparent and fully documented case for not only where we want to go, but where we are, and all of the things that will be required, including the money to make this happen. I do want to say as well that in my limited time on the commission, what I have observed is that our staff is 100% invested in getting to a clean energy future. And to the extent that people don't believe that, yeah, I think that is a regrettable fact. We are not in a fight against moving to a place where we are making maximum contribution to saving a planet that we all share. Also, there is no conclusion that I'm aware of as to where we're going to end with respect to either the repowering issue relative to the current natural gas facilities that are under consideration, or no conclusion with respect to how we get to a 100% clean energy future. What there is a complex series of investigations that are surfacing everything, which is what I have personally requested, that everything be on the table so that we can make an informed conclusion. I don't feel like, you know, I certainly don't feel like I need to mount a defense of the, you know, significant and, you know, effective leadership that has been provided by the governor, the, you know, the mayor, and I think it was the Senate President Pro Tem around climate change. I mean, they have a large megaphone and they do that well, and I respect and support and am grateful for their leadership. But I am committed, and I think it is critical that from this place, I do mount a significant, not defense, but advocate for and assure you that the people at this table, they work incredibly hard. And they are challenged, but they are committed to providing us and you with all of the information that is necessary for us to figure out how to get from here to there. I appreciate, respect, admire, and welcome the voice of every person in this room and every person holding a sign telling us to get on with it. I'm just requesting that you, what is it that Mr. Friedman's mother, I'm going to get this wrong, but she did indicate that, you know, history is in the past, that the future is a mystery, and that we've got to deal with the present. So let's put aside whatever negative history that may have informed your view of this agency from way back. Let's all acknowledge, as I know we do, that the answers to how we achieve our shared vision and our shared commitment are still unfolding. But know that in this present day, there is 100% dedication and commitment to exploring, to presenting, to hearing, and to developing the path from here to there. And the presentation today regarding the need to totally reimagine and rebuild and to redesign a system that has served us all of this time in order to accommodate our future, I mean, that's just the reality. And it is a reality that we know and that you know, so we are going to get about and do have in place the work that is ongoing to determine how we get there. I think I understand passion and can manifest quite a great deal of it. But I am grateful and comforted to know that in addition to passion, we have sitting at the table both expertise and rigor and commitment to data and the ability to perform the work that it will require for us to put forward a process and a plan, a strategy plan, and to implement getting from here to there. That's what it takes. That's certainly our job, and it's their job. And you know, together I'm pretty darn confident that we will achieve our objectives, because it's imperative that we do. And that, I think, is all I want to say about this today. Thank you.
Well, it's difficult to follow those comments. You're so very eloquent, and you really expressed my position on this matter as well. The one thing I'd like to add or request is we have been talking about energy storage for so many years now, and I know that we have been working with MIT and other universities on the progress that has been made over the years. I specifically would like information to learn more about what's transpiring in San Diego and Australia. So if those could be provided in a separate folder to us, studying those case studies I think would be really helpful in trying to analyze what our next step should be. Thank you.
Yes. When you had the slide up there about the outages, the unplanned.
Yes.
Do you have an idea of when they occur? Are they occurring in certain times of the year? In other words, summer more than...
Are you talking about bar chart? The bar chart? Sorry. That?
Yeah. Yes.
We can get that information to you. We didn't do this seasonally. We did it annually, but we could certainly take a look at the data and get back to you. It appears that it's all the time. It could be fires, it could be misoperations, it could be balloons in transmission towers that are metallic coated, and that's a risk, so we turn off the line, climb the tower, and get the balloons out of the tower. It could be like that. So there are many reasons for these outages, for the unplanned outages, and we could certainly quantify that if that's what you'd like to know.
I think that the average person thinks, oh, it's really hot. It's hotter than usual, and so they're not kind of surprised if there's an outage. People running their air conditioning.
I would like to emphasize that the outages are not a result of high customer demand. They are not. They are external forces, force majeure, acts of God, those kinds of things that we are prepared for and we anticipate because they happen frequently. The transmission lines are out in the open. That's the best way to build them because it's very efficient and very cost effective. When you bury these things, it increases the cost tenfold. So it's better to have them up in the air, but then you get balloons in the conductors, you have misoperations, that kind of thing.
Now, some countries do have them underground. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with other entities. I think that transmission lines in general in this country are all above ground, except in Los Angeles and in major cities where there's no room for a transmission tower, so you have to go underground. Most of the transmission in this country is above ground.
Is above?
Yes, above ground.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Would you like are you asking for us to take a look at this on a seasonal basis and maybe quantify some of the results?
Well, I think it would be interesting.
All right.
to see what you would come up with. Now, the
That's
act
doable.
of God, that's,
Yeah.
we'll have to ask
So,
when he's available, or she is available to give us that data, but.
Ratepayer Advocate, do you want to chime in here?
I will do that as part of my presentation.
Okay. Much of what I was going to say was said by Commissioner McLean Hill. I associate myself with her very thoughtful remarks. Most importantly, underscoring that I know that every member of this board and our staff are committed to moving as aggressively and as quickly as we possibly can to 100% renewable. There's a complete consensus on this, and the implication that sometimes arises that there's resistance at the staff level, I think, is unfortunate and inaccurate. So I was very glad that Commissioner McLean Hill made that point, and I want to underscore it as well. There's one slide here that concerns me. I don't think we have time to get into its implications, and I also join my co-commissioners in complimenting and thanking Bill Barlak, who's been fabulous, and we're going to miss greatly. And I hope we can snag you back occasionally for your expertise, hopefully voluntarily.
don't know about that. What slide were you interested in?
Commissioner McLean Hill used to be on the police commission. She may have some expertise about subpoenas. And, the slide I'm talking about is on page 7. And I think it succinctly describes a very substantial part of the problem. The goal is to eliminate basin gas-fired generation, but the predicate here that basin transmission was never intended to be reliably operated without basin gas-fired generation sends all kinds of exclamation points about the nature of the challenge, supplemented by the next dot that DWP has to completely redesign and reconstruct basin transmission system to maximize its power carrying capability in order to reliably operate without basin gas generation in the future. That is an enormous part of the challenge. So the question, just give us a plan, is a little oversimplified. I think that this is going to require very detailed, complex planning. And Mr. General Manager, I think we need to focus on what the we don't need to do it this minute, but the implications of slide 7, in my view, call out for further examination, because as I see it, that underscores a substantial amount of the challenge, and I'm not sure there's an easy answer to it. I'm not asking for a response right now. I just want to lay that out there.
That's how he's bringing you back.
If there are no other questions or comments, and if the ratepayer advocate is going to defer his till his report, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we still have the following management reports to hear. CAISO overview, grid reliability study, and high bill complaints, which has been deferred from a prior meeting. So hopefully, and as well as the RPA's presentation. We'll go through each of those. We'll start with 8A CAISO overview.
So again, from the last meeting, there were some comments about wanting to hear just in general what the CAISO is. And so Simon is here today to provide it. This is not the lengthy, should LA be in it or not? That would be subject to a very lengthy study. This is more, where did it come from? What is it? and providing again some background of that additional information that's been discussed and needs to be presented to the board.
I think it would help to talk about the imbalance market and the extent to which we are engaged in it as well as part of it. Sorry. Yeah.
That could be a presentation in and of itself, so that we can bring back. This was more an overview of the CAISO. It touches very briefly on the EIM, which is a small part of the overall
Very
CAISO.
briefly is fine.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Simon Zodu. I'm the Manager for Regulatory Compliance and Specifications within Power System. I would like to take a few minutes and give you a brief overview of the California Independent Service Operator, commonly known as Cal ISO or CAISO. Before I start discussing the details of California's ISO, I would like to provide some background information on the electric industry, utility industry in North America. On this first slide, you would see the electric utility industry includes 4 major sectors: the utilities, the power plants, the market participants, and federal and state agencies. By utilities, we commonly know them as the power companies. These are entities that generate, transmit, and distribute electrical energy to customers. But I would like to make a note that not all utilities perform all these 3 functions. We do have utilities that do only distribution systems, and we do have some that do only generation and transmission. I would like to give some examples. Some electric utilities include such as investor-owned utilities, commonly known as the IOUs. These are for-profit companies owned by their shareholders. And the federal government does regulate the transmission and generation portion of their business, whereas the state commissions dictate their distribution system and their rate-making capabilities. We also have municipally owned utilities, such as the LADWP, where we're not for-profit entity. We're owned by the cities and counties and constituents we represent. And these utilities are regulated by their respective local governments. The second part is power plants. These refer to these non-utility generators, typically privately owned businesses that own and operate generation assets. And they sell their electricity to utilities, to the market, and also to sometimes directly to end users. Third part, and very important, are the market participants. As you know, electricity is bought and sold on what's known as the wholesale or the energy market. And the market participants include the producers, the power marketers, and the utilities serving the distribution systems along the grid. The market is where all the producers actually offer the electricity prices, and the utilities and the marketers purchase those. They are very important in this sector in making the utility system. Last but not least, federal and state agencies play a huge role. For example, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission on the federal side, they regulate, among other things, interstate transmission, generation, and power sales in the market that supports it. They also mandate reliability and safety regulations and standards. And they do have the authority to enforce any non-compliance or violations that may take place. Similarly, state agencies play a huge role in terms of keeping utilities and balancing authorities in compliance with state laws related to utilities. And they regulate the distribution system in terms of safety. And just to give some examples, within California, we have the California Public Utilities Commission, California Energy Commission, and the California Air Resource Board. These are some examples of regulatory agencies within the state. So moving on, one may ask, what is an independent system operator, or an ISO? An ISO is an organization. It's independent. It's neutral. And it's formed by a recommendation made by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to coordinate, control, and monitor the operation of the electrical power system. And usually ISOs operate within a single state. An ISO operates in the region's electrical grid. They administer the energy market, and they provide reliability planning services for the region's electric system. These are the core duties of an ISO. You may hear, comparable to an ISO, the term regional transmission operator, or RTOs. Basically, RTOs are, they perform similar functions as ISOs, but they cover larger areas, typically multiple states as compared to the ISOs, and they have one added responsibility, which is monitoring and the operation of the region's transmission network, in addition to all the responsibilities that ISOs have. So in essence, ISOs and RTOs act as a marketplace for electrical energy by bringing buyers and sellers of electrical energy and providers of electrical services together in one centralized market. To understand how many ISOs and RTOs there are within the United States, there are 9 of them. It's shown on the map here. The whole North America, all 9 RTOs and ISOs are responsible for operating the electric grid. That said, some major parts of the United States are still operating under what's called the bilateral markets. These are non-ISO territories. You would notice in the West, except the footprint of the California ISO, a good portion of California, Oregon and Washington, including the western states, the Great Plains, and you would notice the southeastern United States, including the state of Florida. They operate under bilateral markets. Bilateral markets are basically mutual agreements that are signed amongst utilities and between producers and utilities to do electrical trade instead of a centralized market where utilities have to engage into the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's very strict and complex tariff provisions and as rules of engagement. So bilateral markets, by and large, are favored by vertically integrated utilities, and all these coexist in managing our grid. I would like to move on and talk mostly about how the California ISO started. I'll call it the birth of ISO. To provide this information, the answer lies with California's deregulation of the electric sector in the 1990s. In the early 90s, California's average electricity price were very high, approximately 60% higher than the US average price for electricity. The state was going through a recession, and a lot of major industries were threatening to leave the state. So in reaction to that, the administration, both the executive and legislature, took some action in terms of to make some major reforms to the power sector, to curtail some of the profit motives of the private companies, and the solution was to restructure. So when the reform began in 1996, known as the Assembly Bill 1890, the 3 privately owned utilities within California, Pacific Gas and Electric, Southern California Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric, were responsible for about 75% of the retail sales within California. The investor-owned utilities were vertically integrated, which means they owned and operated their generation, transmission, and distribution systems. So the California Reform Plan was basically to split and restructure these large utilities. So splitting generation, transmission, and distribution into separate businesses to promote a competition. And some of the measures that were taken by deregulation were mandatory sales of about 50% of all fossil fuel generating plants owned by the IOUs or the investor-owned utilities. Eventually, they sold off 100% of their fossil fuel assets. They were left only with their hydro and nuclear plants. There was a mandatory participation put on the investor-owned utilities to participate in some centralized market. At the time, the state created an entity referred to as a power exchange as part of the deregulation. And third but not least, the state created a nonprofit independent service operator, which we know today as the California ISO, to take operational control of the high voltage transmission lines in California. So that's the birth of the CAISO, and from its inception, it was regulated. It started being regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The next slide is really synonymous with the California deregulation rules. One cannot discuss about deregulation without mentioning the California energy crisis. No single factor can fully account for the crisis, but California's deregulation rules and regulations at the time played a significant role in accelerating the crisis. It was a situation in which there was a shortage of electricity supply that was caused by market manipulation and at times artificial energy shortages, primarily orchestrated by out-of-state energy sellers. We all remember Enron. And the prices of energy at the time went up by about 800%, which was significant. Compounding this price shock to the system were the California's largest utilities were not allowed to pass on this higher cost of electricity to their retail customers. The retail portion of the pricing was capped by the California Public Utilities Commission. So we had a phenomenon called the buy high, sell low scenario, where some of the investor-owned utilities were paying up to 50 cents per kilowatt hour, and they were forced to sell it for 6 cents per kilowatt hour, which clearly created unfunded liabilities for the large utilities to the tune of several billions of dollars. And the Pacific Gas and Electric was forced to file or declare bankruptcy in April of 2001. The Power Exchange, this was a centralized agency taking care of the energy markets, was shut down in 2001 because after Pacific Gas and Electric and Southern California Edison defaulted on payments. They were unable to make payments. So much of the business of the Power Exchange was transformed or moved to the California ISO. So the California ISO overnight became a central market administrator in addition to the grid reliability responsibilities that they have. So the resulting crisis was rolling blackouts. Rolling blackouts are a long-term interruption of service, power service. It happened primarily in the Pacific Gas and Electric and San Diego Gas and Electric territories. That actually depicts what the crisis looked like. One might wonder what happened to municipal utilities during this time. The initial draft of Assembly Bill 1890 actually mandated all utilities within California to participate in the deregulation and restructuring. However, municipal utilities lobbied very hard and earnestly to not to be included in the deregulation statutes. So the legislation in its final form allowed or gave municipal utilities an option of not participating, and most chose not to participate at the end. So municipal utilities put they opted out because of the reasons stated here at the top of the slide. First reason for not participating was to maintain local control. I think the boards and the city councils and the mayor's offices that actually oversee these municipal utilities They didn't want to. They wanted to maintain local control in order to preserve the rate increases that may be open to market and private forces. They did not realize any new benefits. The main reason for the restructuring was the escalating prices and rates. The municipal utilities were able to justify that their rates were already competitive. As a result, they did not want to participate. And they wanted to preserve the investments of their ratepayers from market forces. These are assets in generation and transmission that the ratepayers have paid for, and then they wanted to maintain that within their control. So the city of Los Angeles was totally unaffected or not affected by the California energy crisis because DWP elected not to participate. And it was actually able to provide excess energy to the Southern California Edison, and that enabled much of the greater Los Angeles area to experience only what's known as the rolling brownouts instead of the blackouts in up north in the south. Rolling brownouts are basically a reduction or suppression of the voltage in the system. And a major crisis was avoided. And at the time it was written, and it was known as the wisest and most perceptive decision ever made within California. So I took this saying from a Wall Street Journal, I believe, at the time. So the state of California in this crisis intervened, and it was getting into the energy business. The ramifications included even in 2003 into the re-election of one of our governors. So that was a
ramification. To inform our
ramification.
understanding of the Cal ISO.
Yes.
Okay, because it's a nice history lesson, but I think we probably know it.
Okay. The next slide is the footprint of the California ISO and other balancing authorities within California. It's a non-profit organization. It currently manages about 80% of the electric flow in California. It does not own or maintain any of the transmission or generation facilities. It's not responsible for distribution system. It's regulated by FERC, and it has a board member of 5 appointed by the governor. The next slide is just a highlight of some of the system information for CalISO. What comes out is there are more than 100 members, and it controls about 26,000 miles of transmission lines. Main functions of California ISO include reliability, market operations, and infrastructure planning. Reliability's responsibility as a balancing authority. Market operations is about providing the market to the utilities and the marketers, and it does do annual transmission planning for infrastructure plan improvement. What are the some of the products and services provided by California ISO? Soon, in July of 2019, it will start providing reliability coordinator services for the Western United States. Since its inception, it has provided energy and grid support services. These are reserve generations that are available, that would be available for utilities and balancing authorities. And last but not least, it does have a very robust market regime that includes the day-ahead market and a real-time market. What we know today as the energy imbalance market is a small portion of the real-time market within California ISO. A quick comparison about LADWP and the California ISO. We own and maintain our own generating and transmission assets. We provide energy to load, which means we are a distribution company. California ISO does not do any one of those. Both LADWP and CalISO are transmission operators, and we balance supply and demand. That's our responsibility as balancing authorities. And the market operation and reliability coordinator is CalISO's main function, and we deal with bilateral energy trades instead of a centralized market. The last slide is really to show DWP's various interconnections with other balancing authorities, including the California ISO, and actually to demonstrate that even the other balancing authorities are interconnected with each other, which makes our interconnected Western grid. With that, I think this concludes my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer.
Any questions?
Yeah, quick question. Why are we having this presentation right now?
That's it. I didn't hear you.
Why are we having this presentation right now?
In the last board meeting, there was a request to have more information regarding the CAISO.
It was about the imbalance market, not CAISO. I think board members, we can say, I'm going to just speak for myself. Don't want to involve anybody. But I attended the public utility seminar or workshop, and I learned a lot about CAISO. In fact, I have some board members of CAISO that are close friends of mine. I appreciate you bringing CAISO and explaining, but the request in the last board meeting was to talk about the imbalance market and how that related to scattered good plans and other plans, and how can we utilize the imbalance market to mitigate our energy needs.
And we'll bring that.
And I was going to say, that was the request as I understood it as well.
But I appreciate you walk us through memory line to come back to CAISO and really hashed out what CAISO is about.
Yeah. If I may touch on slide number 12 under the day-ahead market and real-time market.
Yeah.
Before, all utilities and balancing authorities are required to do day-ahead scheduling for the next day's operation. And by then, they declare that they are resource adequate for the following day. And when the real-time market is open only for those utilities and balancing authorities that are resource adequate for that day. And the real-time market is basically balances what was scheduled the day before with the real-time demand. And any variance or any imbalance, no pun intended, but the energy imbalance market comes in after utilities declare that they're resource adequate. So in terms of using substituting EIM for local generation, we need to be resource adequate a day before and declare that. The energy imbalance market cannot be used for long-term planning. It's done for a near-term, very short-term imbalances or variances that take place within the system.
So in other words, it would not help us with regard to additional...
It would not help us for that intended purpose.
On reliability, no.
Yes.
Yeah. But on other things, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Very helpful and appreciated. 8C, grid reliability study.
I just wanted to mention, this was approved on consent, and this was put here in case you would like a presentation. It's a one-page report in your packet. If you'd like a presentation, we can make one. If you'd like to defer it, and we could come back, or if you'd just like to read the report.
It was approved on consent, unless there's some great desire to revisit it, I think we could move on. Let's move on. High bill complaints. Can't imagine anybody would have an interest in this one. Only everybody I meet.
Good morning, Ann Santilli, Chief Financial Officer, and George Chen, our Rates Manager. Following a much hotter late summer, customer complaints to LADWP customer contact staff, members of the board, and to the general manager regarding high bills increased from August to November of 2018. Higher electric and water use by customers was noted when compared to the same period in 2017, attributable primarily to higher temperatures experienced from 17 to 18 in the summer months. At the same time, we had previously approved water and electric rate increases, which took effect July 1st, which is the start of the department's fiscal year. Many customers compare costs from one billing period to the next instead of from the same period to the prior year, more of an apples-to-apples comparison. When explained by DWP staff, the vast majority of customers realized that their use and their corresponding bill was actually higher than they thought, largely due to higher air conditioning use during the summer as compared to 2017. In some cases, customer bills were actually lower than the previous year, but they didn't realize it until they had been explained by staff. So this is an example of a comparison on the power side. And then the same incident also occurred on the water side, where people were looking at their bill to the last billing cycle instead of looking at the prior year to do an apples-to-apples comparison. DWP does have conservation-based rates. With hotter temperatures, higher than historic electric and water usage pushed some customers into higher pricing tiers than they had previously experienced. Based on the graduated pricing in the higher tiers, some customers experienced much higher bills for their summer use than they did in the prior years. This is an example of our power tiered pricing. And on the water side, we also have water tiered pricing. Power bills are adjusted every quarter. Water bills are adjusted, billing rates are adjusted every 6 months. Average residential electric bills citywide were up 12% between August and September, but at the same time, temperature increases were 17% higher when compared to 2017. On average, the water bills were up 6% during June to September 2017, also reflecting the hotter temperature of 17%. We looked closer at the billing data underlying these increases. On the water side, though, 15% of our customers actually had a decrease of 15% or more of their bill from the prior year. 60% had no bill increase at all. 9% had an increase of 15% or less, and 7% had an increase of 15 to over 30%. 9% of our accounts had changes in the customer name, service address, or meter number that did not allow us to compare the data. On the water side, on the power side, 10% of the customer bill had a decrease of 15% or more. 59% had no increase at all. 11% had an increase of 15% or less, and 9% had an increase of 15 to 30%. 11% had a change in either their customer name, their service address, or their meter number, so we couldn't validate those information. But these bill decreases are all due to conservation. It's important to remind customers that we have many money-saving programs that help them reduce their water and electric use, and as a result, their bill. Our new attic installation program is one easy way for customers to reduce their electricity use, and we're offering to cover 80% of the cost, up to $1 per square foot, for qualifying customers. We also still offer other great water and power conservation rebates, including turf removal, variable speed pool pump, efficient water washing machines, weather-based irrigation controllers, and many other efficient products for their home. Customers can visit ladwp.com/conservation for information on these programs. Another very important program is our refrigerator exchange program. People can exchange an older refrigerator for free for a qualifying old one. Estimated savings are $60 per year, and these newer refrigerators use more than 50% less energy than the prior older versions. Another program that I've heard customers talk highly about is our home energy improvement program, which can help them save on both their water and their power bill. Customers who sign up for this program have one of our trained technicians go out and they look at all of their energy and water usage, and then they help identify what is the most appropriate usage changes to help them reduce their bill. Two board meetings ago, we were out at the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, and the president of the Rinaldi Neighborhood Council, Porter Ranch, she had this done, and she couldn't say enough accolades during the VANC meeting to support the program. So in conclusion, we did want to just let you know that we did notice there were higher bills, but there's a lot of conservation programs. And rates, you know, we have a lot of road ahead of us to make changes, so rates we'll see them changing. But conservation is a way to help keep the bill down. And we'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes.
So I'm curious, did your analysis give you any sense of geographic concentration with respect to those customers that were seeing significant increases in their rates, you know, that 15 to 30% jump?
Compared to the one year to the next, I think the Sherman Oaks, the Valley had more, but then we did have some outages in Koreatown and others, so they didn't have the usage to compare it against.
And just because as you make this presentation, and you also have, there are two things that come to mind. A, there is our ability to provide on the front end customers with some, helpful tips or some kind of, awareness of the potential or the need to manage their usage in order to not be shocked by, or to get sort of sticker shock by significant jumps in their bills. And also, it seems that if we're seeing in specific regions or geographic areas the kind of concentration of spikes, that perhaps we might want to target those areas with the additional information regarding the conservation supports and programs that we have that can help them over the long term manage that issue as well. And I'd be, I think that that effective communication on the front end and effective marketing of the things that we have available that can help them manage these issues will go a long way toward abating the frustration that these complaints represent. So I'd like to make sure that we are being strategic and thinking about how we address this issue, and not just sort of notice that it's occurring.
Well, we'll work on that. Yes.
Other questions or comments? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Ratepayer advocate, overview of the power industry timeline.
Given the time, would you like to defer this until the next meeting? Or would it help to have it now?
How long of a presentation is it?
How many questions are you going to ask? It could be done in under 10 minutes.
I think you should go ahead and do it.
We've been talking about a lot of aspects of the power industry, and I thought I'd help frame some of that and put it in perspective. First, I'd like to look at the scale of the North American electric system geographically, and how big is it in terms of energy and power, this comparative scope of DWP system, and also look at segments of the technology. And then, while we talk about that technology, look at the timeline for planning and operating the power system. This is a familiar picture that's been used elsewhere. I've added to this picture the balancing authorities, which includes the ISOs and RTOs, but also the utilities that balance their own systems like DWP. This is the U.S. portions are subject to reliability restrictions administered by the National Electric Reliability Corporation, and the whole of the Canadian, U.S., and the little bit of Mexican systems in this system constitute about 350 million people, and it is about 1,000 gigawatts in capacity. That's about 1,000 large-scale nuclear plants. And there are 211,000 miles of high-voltage transmission. That's 230,000 volts and above, and over 1 trillion in assets. For perspective, 350 million people is about 5% of the world's population. So taken as a whole in North America, we're still a small share of the world's impact from this industry. How big is big in terms of power capacity? And capacity is measured in watts, and it's an instantaneous measure. An LED light, a new innovation, uses 9 watts, and it will put out about the same, a 9-watt LED light these days will put out about the same amount of light as a traditional 60-watt light bulb. And that reduction in that wattage over time has turned into a big innovation for the industry, and that's an innovation that's developed over the last 30 years. And we are driven, this industry has been driven by innovation since its inception. It isn't just LED lights, it's several cycles of generation technology, and a very long-term cycle from invention to commercialization. The photovoltaic electric effect was discovered in the 1800s. We were using photocells for space power systems in the 60s, and we didn't start commercializing them for integrated power until the aughts, and it became cheaper, at least desert scale didn't become cheaper than gas-fired alternatives until the past couple of years. So innovation is a big component of this. Innovation has also been important in the oil business. Oil prices have been more or less static in inflation-adjusted terms since the 1880s, and that industry has stayed competitive by innovating continuously. But not all of innovation proceeds smoothly. The U.S. attempted to innovate in supersonic transport planes in the 60s. I had a colleague who was working at Boeing on an attempt to do a second version of that, and he described the efforts as, oh gee, I did the whole timeline for this, and there were a whole bunch of invent this steps. Well, the power industry is about a whole bunch of invent this steps, and some of the changes we're talking about here involve invent this steps. Back to the relative scale of the challenge, I've listed a series of power plants and energy users going down that list. You'll see DWP's capacity on there. Southern California Edison is about 3 times larger than we are, and all of California is a little more than double Southern California Edison. For US and Canada, there are the peak resources of about 1,000 gigawatts or 1 million megawatts. How about in energy? Energy is watts times hours. So a 60 kilowatt equivalent LED running half the time might use 3.3 kilowatt hours per month, where an old 60 watt incandescent will use almost 22 kilowatt hours per month. And that would be part of a 300 to 1,000 kilowatt a month average single family residential bill. We go down to the city of LA, and in 2017, the federal statistics for DWP are we sold about 22.7 billion kilowatt hours, or 22.7 terawatt hours. That number is lower than we expected. Southern California Edison is slightly more than 3 times the amount of energy sales as DWP. And last time I checked that number was larger too. Same for California. We're seeing the effects of conservation in California because these energy sales numbers are getting smaller than they were expected to be a few years ago. If you look at the overall Western Electric Coordinating Council, Baja, Alberta, British Columbia, and the Western American states, that number is about the same. So we're ahead in conservation. And if you look at US and Canada overall, that number is increasing. We've seen other charts of DWP's power system, but DWP's power system is exceptional in terms of its interconnection reach north and east relative to much of the other components of the Western systems. Now, if we break up and look at the bulk power system, we've discussed generating stations, generator step-up, transmission lines, step-down, and the various kinds of distribution lines. A lot of the discussion, or excuse me, all the discussion about RTOs and ISOs is about transmission lines and generation resources. So the rest of my comments are about the bulk power system components. And a complex component of this is the transmission network. Transmission networks have key components that make them attractive. One, they provide redundancy, and if they have extra capacity, flexibility to mix resources. The redundancy comes from ability to flow power over lines or over other lines when a given line is out of service or when a generator is out of service. But there are limits. There are limits on the capacity of these lines. There's limit from the various resources. For example, hydro facilities might have limits on how quickly they can ramp up or ramp down production, and they typically have annual total energy usage limits based on how much it's rained. There are minimum generation limits before they have to shut down on key types of generators. A large fossil generator like Scattergood might take, given its design, a day or two to start up. A nuclear unit may take a month to restart. So there are challenges on various timescales of managing these systems. Which brings me to the timeline. As you look at all that's needed to plan and operate a power system on an engineering scale, you have building the system and dealing with the investments over very long time scales. The longest component of the time scale is our Faustian bargain, nuclear waste, which may have a half-life of over 100,000 years. And building new facilities typically takes 5 to 10 years of planning and permitting, followed by a 5 or so year building cycle, and the life will be, depending on the technology, 10 to 200 years. I've dealt with hydro facilities that were over 200 years and were originally built not to produce power, electric power, but to produce mechanical power in the mills of New England. They've been rehabbed and are producing power now. And then we have on the shorter end, gas turbine systems may have life between major overhauls of as short as 10 years, and major overhauls having a significant capital cost in the interim. Then the next step in this is over a period of years to months, you have to decide when to maintain these facilities. When some facilities are out for refilling, like nuclear facilities, they may be out for an extended period of months or longer. And regular fossil generation units may be down for a month or more while they are maintained. There may be shorter term outages if it's a simple fix. And that would generally constitute unplanned outage problems like Mr. Barlak discussed. Then at the operating level, on a period from days to a week, you have unit commitment. That's when do you start up a power plant. Some power plants you might start every week. Some you might try to start every day. Some you might not like to ever shut down, except for between refuelings. Those are typically the nuclear units. So the operating time scale for scheduling and operating, it goes from about a week down to what's called economic dispatch, which is done on a 5 to 15-minute basis by looking at the incremental operating costs of these plants on a wide area grid. In California, we do it on the California ISO, except for those with their own control areas. And finally, below that 5 to 15-minute time frame, you're in the range of automatic control. And you have spinning reserves, that is generators that are running at low levels and are capable of ramping up or ramping down quickly. You have challenges with controlling the frequency, because frequency of all the rotating generators indicates a balance of supply and demand in the system. And you have to keep that frequency very close to 60 cycles. And in fact, that has to be maintained throughout the entire Western Interconnect. And then in a very short time frame, from 100 cycles or less, this is 60 cycle power, so you might be talking a few milliseconds, 10s or 20 milliseconds in some instances, where you can have problems. The discussion on IPP and the need for rotating generation capacity at IPP, given the existing HVDC technology, was about problems with transient stability. So we span a time scale from milliseconds to decades. If you add markets, this shows the timeline integrated with markets, and we have at the longest end of the time frame investment, and we have what are called forward markets, or markets where you contract in advance for delivery of power later, that will span a period from years to days. And then you have spot markets. The day-ahead market has been discussed here, the hour-ahead market, and then the imbalance or real-time markets. The rules in these markets vary by jurisdiction, so to understand any individual case, you have to inquire as to the detail in the markets, and there has to be communication between entities when negotiating these things. And then in the short term, for the automatically controlled aspects, there will be contracts to act as to maintain reliability, often called reliability must-run contracts. That's the end of my presentation. If there's some supplemental materials you may find interesting, or if you have questions.
Any questions?
My only question is that you and your staff schedule some time with me to go over this presentation in a little more detail and more slowly, as you simply outlined or highlighted the tremendous gap between what you know and what I know. So thank you.
You'll feel that way frequently.
The timeline is key to understanding this business, because decisions often depend upon several steps throughout this timeline. So we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, we have 3 agenda items. 2 of them are, I believe, relatively quick. They're the ones I have to recuse myself from, 17 and 18. Before that, we have 14. Multiple award agreement numbers, the numbers, for site investigation and remediation services, Kleinfelder Inc., Tetra Tech Inc., and Stantec Consulting Services Inc. We have 1 speaker card. We'll hear from the speaker, and then we'll hear a presentation.
Yeah, the speaker switched his number earlier, so he doesn't need to speak now.
Oh, okay, fine. Good. So who's presenting? Yes.
Mark Slotchek, Director of Environmental Affairs, and Justin Gonzalez, our Manager on Site Investigation.
I don't know if you want a whole presentation or if you just want me to ask my question.
Commissioner Noonan wanted to, had a question or two, so let's start with her and see if we can expedite this.
And these questions, they really relate to the advancements that we've made in procurement and making it a more user-friendly platform. But also, I still think that there are so many areas of improvement. And so a lot of things stood out with this request that I just wasn't comfortable with. And I'm not putting the onus on you, but I think it's something as a department that we really need to discuss. In previous years, there have been times where the department had worked with an agency and had experienced a bad result, which led to litigation. And what blew me away was that that same vendor was allowed to rebid on new work, and there was nothing taken into consideration about the bad experience that we had had before with such a company. At the time, with our rating system, it was actually against the rules to have any history from our experiences with previous vendors. And I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair to our ratepayers. You know, when I was going through this request, you know, Tetra Tech, they're all over the news right now. The U.S. Justice, you know, is suing them for approximately $800 million for false invoices. And even though this hasn't gone to court yet, I don't like the idea of signing a 5-year deal with a company that may be found guilty for these kind of practices. I mean, it's our fiduciary duty to protect the ratepayers from things like that happening. So one of my questions was, you know, in the past, we've awarded 3-year contracts. Why are you requesting 5 years? And the other thing that I've asked for several times is, you know, I think it's so important to have a really, really comprehensive context of how long have we been working and awarding contracts to certain vendors. So, you know, this request, it caps it out at 5 years, and I really just don't think that's long enough to really show an overall picture of whether or not there is a bias being given to certain companies, whether they're law firms, whether they're marketing firms. I think 5 years doesn't cut it because most of the contracts that we do approve, they're usually between 3 years, right, with additional options. And so in the future, I really would like to see a longer history than just 5 years. I think it really gives us as a board more understanding as to if there is a reason why we keep awarding a contract to a company. I think we need to be transparent and talk about it out loud with our ratepayers. So.
Understood. Well, one reason we're looking at 5 years is we're right in the process of working with the state agencies to investigate these sites. And the benefit of a 5-year time frame is it provides more continuity versus 3 years. So the agencies, when Department of Tox, we met with them, they were appreciative that we were looking at a longer term contract to do the work. The second item regarding Tetra Tech, that was part of the discussion that came up with supply chain. We looked at their qualifications, and in terms of the investigation that was being done at the federal level, it was separate than the team that we're working with. We're working with a local team of just people working on our specific projects, and they weren't involved in those broader federal projects. So supply chain was part of the discussion with legal. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would ask, David, you've been great. I know that you and I have spoken offline about some of the procurement issues. So I would like, if you take into consideration my request about a more lengthy, comprehensive history of how often we have awarded contracts to a particular agency. And also, I'd like to have a legal opinion as to whether or not the way that we do rate different bids, whether or not we can have points deducted for a company that, whether it was us or in this particular assignment, I think, you know, if they are found guilty of committing this fraud, I think it's something that should be taken into consideration when signing a $25 million contract. I know there's 3 entities, but still, that still equates to approximately $8 million to them. And I think it's important for the department and for the ratepayers to know who they're doing business with, who we're supporting in our community. So those are all requests that I'd like you to take into consideration.
Yeah. And I guess for me, yeah, I hadn't looked at these particular issues at the level of depth and detail that that the commissioner is highlighting, and I typically don't have questions or concerns without, you know, some action item associated with it. And so just without hearing more, that causes me to be less unsettled by the comments that have been made. I'm not terribly comfortable approving an agreement for $25 million with this set of players. So, I mean, there may be more, but I don't know that I'm specifically, I don't know that simply saying, well, it's this group over there, not this group here, is sufficient. And I certainly, I don't really understand the history that's being referenced, but it's a little, for me, it's just, it raises enough questions for me to want to sit this one out.
Nancy?
So I just, without having much to add in terms of the response around one company in particular, the only thing I would just add is that these are as needed contracts, so we're not obligated to, we need the contracts in place because we have ongoing site cleanup needs and working with particularly Department of Toxic Substances Control to some extent. We don't have full control over the schedule of what we do when, but it is also an as-needed contract. So as the work is ready to be done or has to be done, that's when we spend the money. So we are not obligated to spend all $25 million, or even, unless we have come to some understanding with the regulators that something has to occur, a specific thing has to occur at a specific time.
Is there something that you need in the immediate future here?
I'm Josephine Gonzalez, and I'm actually the manager of this work. And I can tell you that some of it is immediate, as we have voluntary cleanup agreements with regulatory entities that we need to respond to. We can't just tell them we don't have a contract. They don't really accept that as an answer. And then a lot of this also, the amount has been increased because we're responding to our internal customers for both property that we're purchasing, we're divesting from, construction projects. We do pre-surveys as well so that costs can be saved, so that the contractor who is doing the work knows what they might encounter. And so that's a lot of what we do when we respond to this contract on an as-needed basis. I will say that these projects are rather technically oriented, and so it does take a while for each contractor to come up to speed, to be familiar with the work that's done there. And it is easier to respond to the regulatory requirements when we have continuity of those contractors.
I have a question. I also wasn't aware of the background that Commissioner Newman mentioned, even though it was all over the news, as she indicates. I haven't been reading it as carefully as I should. I'm wondering if it would be a constructive suggestion to approve 2 of these and have you come back with additional detail on the one that's under a cloud.
Well, I think that would be, in terms of just continuity of work, if that's what the board wants, I think that would probably be better so that we can continue to respond to the sort of our interactions with DTSC. And also, I mean, these contracts are, as Josephine was saying, we work with a number of different parties, but it's also to, to reduce environmental hazard, environmental risk at our own sites. So we'd certainly like to have the opportunity to continue some of the work that's already underway, and I think that would be okay, and then we can come back with some additional investigation and response on that one company in particular. At least it's my understanding that they do a fair amount of business with the city, and at least with the city there haven't been any issues, but that's not to say that there aren't important issues that we should take a look at with respect to that contractor.
Well, I want to appreciate President Levine for coming up with that recommendation, because like Commissioner McLean-Hill, I wouldn't have felt comfortable moving forward, at least not at this point, given the circumstances. The other thing, too, if I could just add to this compromise, it also bothered me how many people, very, very established companies like AECom, you know, they fell out. I thought it was very odd that a company as professional as AECom, as well as, I can't remember the second one, were eliminated because they failed to meet the deadline, which I found that a little bit suspicious for a company that's so well organized and that we've done so much work with. I just want to make sure that we're being clear. I also really sympathized with the protest letter that we received, because this company, they did the bid perfectly well, but they forgot one signature line, and so they were immediately eliminated. And I know that we've talked about in the past having some kind of process where the bid is scanned, and so something as trivial as that doesn't eliminate a company that, you know, I believe is a local business that we would love to, you know, recruit to doing additional biddings. So if you are going to, if you find it necessary to rebid the third party, I would ask that you go back to the AEComs, to the protest company, and give them another opportunity to bid on assignments, because I think all of those companies are very reputable. And for the company that was eliminated just because of one signature line, I just hope that in the future we can prevent something as silly as that from happening. And yes, the onus was on their end, but at the same token, if with our scanning abilities and everything else, we should be able to notify them and say, you forgot this.
We could discuss those with supply chain services, and
Okay.
as well provide some additional information about those who either chose not to bid or were unsuccessful.
Actually, a contractor on here was rejected previously for just that reason in a previous bid, because they forgot a signature.
You
So
know-
we've done that. It's been historic part of our procurement process. So I just want to make sure you don't think that we are singling out AECom, because we're not. It's done before it even reaches us.
Yeah, this wasn't even my idea. This was former Commissioner Fleming's idea. He said, you know, with this day and age and this technology, providing a bid should be like checking out at Amazon.com. You know, if you forgot your CVC number, it says you can't complete this until you provide us with this number. I really, really think by making this platform more user-friendly, it's only going to increase the people who want to do work with the department, and I think it's good for our local economy, and it's good for the ratepayers because we'll get more competitive pricing. Thank you.
It's not comforting to know that we did the same thing to someone else.
Sorry.
So I move to amend this recommendation that we will approve the maximum expenditure contracts for up to whatever 2/3 of $25 million is for Kleinfelder and Stantec, and that you will come back with further information about the prospective third recipient of the contract.
So if we could just provide one piece of information.
The $25 million was split among three firms, $9 million for Kleinfelder and $8 million for Stantec. So
Okay,
they were
so
individual agreements.
17 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any objection to my amendment? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the amended item?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have items 17 and 18. I have to recuse, so I would disappear.
Asked us Commissioner Berard, would you like us to take it into closed session after those two items?
Yes. Yeah.
Commissioner Berard, you're also recused on 17 and 18.
Yes.
That's what we're taking up right now.
Yes. I'm leaving.
Come back in 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Oh, 2 minutes.
We'll see you back. You get head start.
What?
You get head start.
Okay.
That's an incentive to hurry up for us. I won't let you down, Marty. So, with Commissioners Levine and Berard having departed the chamber, we'll take up item 17, approval of the groundwater treatment action for the Tahunga Well Field project and adoption of the mitigated neg deck in accordance with CEQA. Do I have a motion on that item?
So moved.
A second. Is there an objection? Hearing no objection, the item is approved. And we'll move to item 18, which is the adoption of the interim remedial action decision for the Tahunga Well Field. Again, is there a motion on that item?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Hearing, it's been moved and seconded. Any objection? Then the item is approved, and we will adjourn to closed session.
At this point, we will recess into closed session to address the items on items 20 of the agenda, and in accordance with California Government Code Section 54957.1, we will report any final actions taken thereon. We are in recess. I do every time.